Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening and welcome to Town of Ajax Committee of Adjustment meeting for today, June 30th, 2021. This meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is being held electronically and live streamed on the internet. Due to the COVID-19 emergency and requirements for physical distancing, no in-person attendance is permitted at this meeting. All regular practices and procedures of the committee continue to apply during this electronic meeting. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. Thank you for your patience. We'll now proceed with the meeting. Before moving on to the application portion of this evening's meeting, I would like to confirm whether there are any disclosures of interest from members of committee or staff for any of the applications tonight. Seeing none, thank you. And if we can look for adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting on May 26th. See, Lori, thank you. And is there a seconder? Mark? Great, thank you. All those in favor? Great, all in favor. Meetings from the May 26th meeting have been adopted. The committee is bound by the Planning Act to assess each application based upon its ability to meet 4 tests: that the application is minor in nature, is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the lands, and finally is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The process for tonight's meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant and/or agent will be called upon and at their option may provide a brief description of the minor variance application they have applied for. Committee members may ask questions of the applicant, after which anyone with a direct interest in the application will be given the opportunity to speak either for or against the application. Once a motion is put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant or anyone having interest in the application. After a decision is made, notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. Anyone having interest in the application may appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal within 20 days of the decision of the committee. After 20 days, the decision shall become final and binding. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the appeal period. However, no building permits will be issued until the appeal period is over and the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present at all times. And beginning with introductions of members of committee for this evening, we have Mark Pavlik, Cecil Ramnath, Wasif Ahmed, Lori Roberts, and I'm the chair of the committee, Greg Whitfield. And with us from town staff, we have Carolyn Murphy, planner with the town of Ajax, and Eric Simpson, planner and acting secretary treasurer for the town of Ajax. The first application for tonight's meeting is application A31/20 for the property at 8 Elizabeth Street. The variances requested this evening are to permit a platform more than 1.2 meters in height above finished ground level to have a minimum setback of 2.7 meters from the rear lot line, where the bylaw requires a rear lot line setback of 4 meters. To permit a minimum setback from the front lot line of 4.2 meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum front lot line setback of 6 meters. To permit a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 3.9 meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum rear lot line setback of 7.5 meters. And to permit a maximum lot coverage of 50%, whereas the maximum lot coverage in the bylaw is 33%. Eric, was notice served and were any responses received?
Notice was served and no correspondence was received.
Great, thank you. And is the applicant for 8 Elizabeth Street with us this evening?
Yes, Said Mansouri is here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So for the applicant, town staff have recommended approval of the application subject to 4 conditions listed within the staff report. 1, that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 8 Elizabeth Street and is generally illustrated on the drawings submitted with this application, shown as figures 3 and 4 within the report, or this decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant satisfy all conditions of the development agreement executed under land division application LD 097/2019. 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary approvals or permits from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, or this decision shall become null and void. And 4, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. For the applicant, have you received a copy of this report?
Yes, we have received.
Yes, we have.
Great, thank you. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended by staff? No?
No question.
No questions.
Okay, Great. If you'd like to take this opportunity to introduce yourself, and if there's any additional detail you'd like to provide us on this application, now's your opportunity.
I just would like to, as an applicant and owner of the lot, I just would like to thank you, the committee members and Town of Ajax, and will abide by those conditions that's set by Town of Ajax and the committee.
Great, thank you. Okay, do members of committee have any questions for the applicant or staff? Lori?
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to staff, I just had a more of a comment. I'm not sure if it's a question, but on page 5 of the staff report, under the section that says maximum lot coverage variance, the second paragraph says that due to land conveyance that was required as part of the land division application process, the lot area of the subject property was considerably impacted, and then goes on to explain. So I'm having a hard time reconciling the fact that the land was considerably impacted, but we're saying that these requests are minor in nature, and just wanted just a little bit of an explanation as far as that goes.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So the whole rear portion of the lot had to be conveyed to the TRCA for environmental protection purposes. Typically in an R1B zone, based on the minimum lot depth and frontage requirements, you would have an area with it over 500 square meters. And I believe after the conveyance, this property has an area of 365 square meters. So the actual proposed footprint of the dwelling, if it were to be, I guess, in a comparable lot, like meeting the minimum requirements for an R1B zone lot, it would achieve that 33%.
I apologize. Can you say that last part again? I didn't quite understand what you said there. If it was a comparable lot?
Yeah, so if you were to take this building footprint that's proposed and place it on a lot that would meet the minimum requirements in the R1B zone, it would comply with the lot coverage. So in this case, yeah, it's a lot higher, but I mean, it's not a building footprint that's out of character for an R1B zone, essentially.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Any further questions from members of committee? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak either for or against the application this evening? Seeing none, in that case, if we can look for a motion, please. Cecil?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to approve minor variance application. A3120 for 8 Elizabeth Street, subject to all staff conditions, as it is minor in nature and it meets the 4 tests as per the zoning bylaws and official plan. I move to approve.
Great, thank you. And is there a seconder on the motion? Wasif, thank you. And all those in favor? Great. All in favor, application A31/20 is approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period. Okay, moving on to application A16/21 for 410 Finley Avenue. The variance requested is to permit a minimum interior side lot line setback of 3 meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum setback from the interior side lot line of 3.6 meters. Eric, was notice served and were any responses received?
Notice was served and no responses were received.
Great, thank you. And is the applicant with us this evening?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. For the applicant, staff have recommended approval of the application, subject to 2 conditions within the staff report. 1, that the owner or applicant obtains approval of site plan amendment application SPA 8/21 to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. And 2, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Have you received a copy of this report?
Yes, we have.
Great. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended by staff?
No, we don't.
Great, thank you. If you want to take this opportunity to introduce yourself, and if there's any additional information you'd like to provide us in the application, now's your chance.
Sure, just a brief comment, Mr. Chairman. So, good evening. My name is Claudio Belvino from the GAR Research Group, representing the registered owner of 410 Finley Avenue. As you are aware, the owner is seeking minor variance relief to reduce the northern interior side lot line setback from the required 3.6 meters to the proposed 3.0 meters. The small 0.6 relief is required to accommodate operational requirements related to warehouse racking and the ability to efficiently maneuver forklifts and other equipment. Furthermore, due to the layout and the requirement of the drive aisle and the pedestrian walkway, along with the parking on the south side of the proposed building, shifting the building addition 0.6 meters south was not possible. So we have read staff's report and are in agreement with staff zoning assessment, along with staff's land use planning comments. We also note that there were no comments or concerns from any internal or external agencies. We agree with staff's conclusion in that the application is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands, is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the town zoning bylaw and town's official plan. And finally, that staff have no objections to the approval of the minor variance. We further agree with staff's recommendation for approval of the minor variance to include all the conditions outlined in the staff report. So thank you for your consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any questions for the applicant? Cecil?
Yeah, through the chair, this is a question for staff. In regards to the deciduous trees that are proposed to be planted, would this be subject to Town of Ajax approval?
Through the chair, yes, it would be. So through the site plan amendment application that ultimately needs to be approved, all the landscaping would be reviewed and approved.
Thank you.
Laurie?
Sorry, through you to the staff, I apologize if this was already asked. Was notice served? Did any of the neighboring companies reply to this at all?
Through the chair, yes, notice was served and there was no comments from any neighbors.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions from members of committee? Seeing none. Okay, and is there anyone here to speak either for or against the application? Seeing none. In that case, if we can look for a motion on the proposal, please. Wasif?
Mr. Chair, I move to have the committee approve application A1621 410 Finley on the basis that it is minor in nature, meets the 4 tests, and subject to the 2 conditions that's outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. And is there a seconder on the motion? Mark? Thank you. Seconded by Mark. And all those in favor? All in favor, application A16/21 for 410 Finley is approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, moving on to application A21/21 for 8 Chapman Drive. Variance request tonight is to permit a maximum garage width of 7.9 meters, where the bylaw requires a maximum garage width of 6.1 meters. Is the applicant and/or agent with us this evening?
Yes, we're here.
Yes. Great, thank you. For the applicant, staff have written a report recommending Eric, was notice served and were any responses received?
Yes, notice was served and no responses were received.
Great, thank you. back to the applicant. Staff have written a report recommending approval of the application subject to 3 conditions. 1, that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 8 Chapman Drive as shown on the site plan submitted with this application and found as figure 2 within the report, or this decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant provide tree hoarding to preserve and protect the existing town-owned boulevard trees prior to construction to the satisfaction of the town's landscape architect, or this decision shall become null and void. And 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. For the applicant, have you received a copy of this report?
Yes, I did receive a copy.
Great, thank you. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended by staff?
No,
Great, thank you. So if you'd like to take this opportunity to introduce yourself and if there's any additional information you'd like to provide on the application, now's your opportunity.
yeah, I am Rich Kishunal, and thanks for the committee member for approving my variance and the planning department.
Great, thank you. Members of committee, is there anything you'd like or any questions for the applicant? Lori?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to clarify, we haven't approved the application yet. We are going through the process. We will have a little bit of a discussion and then one of the members will make a motion to either approve or reject this application. So just wanted to let the applicant know that. But I did have a couple of comments to either the staff or the applicant. Are there currently any buildings on this property?
There is storage sheds only.
Storage sheds. And the proposal of what's going to be built, is the access to the garage going to be from the side, not necessarily like you're not driving into the garage from Chapman? Am I reading that correctly?
No, it's not facing Chapman. The garage is not facing Chapman Drive.
Okay, so you access it kind of sideways.
On the sideways, yeah.
On the side, okay. And then just one more question to staff, please. When I was looking at this property on Google Maps, there appears to be, and I'm not sure if I'm looking at it properly, a retaining wall almost at the front, at the part of the property that's on Chapman. Is that something that needs to be retained as a result of the 3 conditions?
Through the chair, so something like that is a grading detail that will ultimately get reviewed and approved through the building permit process. So simply having the fact that all necessary building permits be obtained would capture that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions? Oh, Mark?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. So I understand it's approximately a 2-meter relief that's being sought, and it would take it to 7.9 meters. Could you just comment on how typical that is for the area to have 7.9 or 8-meter with garages?
Through the chair, yeah. So when we have had these interior facing garages in the past, they typically have gone through variances because they're much larger. I can say, I mean, in this area specifically, nothing off the top of my head, but we have, like elsewhere within the town, done garage variances of this size and actually even larger.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of committee? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak either for or against the application this evening? Seeing none. Okay, if we can look for a motion then, please. Mark?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve application A21/21 for 8 Chapman Drive, seeing that it's minor nature and meets the 4 tests, subject to the conditions put forth by the town.
Thank you. And is there a seconder on the motion? Wasif? Thank you. And all those in favor? Right, all in favor, application A21/21 for 8 Chapman Drive is approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period. Okay, and moving on to our final application for this evening, application A22/21 for 400 Salem Road North. The variances requested this evening are to permit a minimum landscape buffer of 4.4 meters adjacent to a type B arterial road, being Salem Road North, with a patio permitted within this area, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum landscape buffer of 9 meters for properties adjacent to type B arterial roads. To permit a minimum landscape buffer of 3 meters adjacent to a type C arterial road, being Carrison Drive East, with a patio permitted within this area, where the bylaw requires a landscape buffer of 6 meters for properties adjacent to type C arterial roads. To permit a minimum total of 35 parking spaces for a convenience store, restaurant, drive-through restaurant, and automatic motor vehicle washing establishment uses on the lot, where the bylaw requires a minimum of 1 space per 20 square meters of gross floor area for a convenience store for a total of 13 spaces, a minimum of 1 space per 10 square meters of gross floor area for a restaurant for a total of 18 parking spaces, a minimum of 1 space per 15 square meters of gross floor area for a drive-through restaurant for a total of 12 parking spaces required, and a minimum of 1 space per 20 square meters of gross floor area for all other drive-through facilities, including car wash, for a total of 7 required parking spaces, resulting in a total required parking space, total of 50 parking spaces required by the bylaw. Further to that, to permit a drive-through restaurant as an additional permitted use, to permit a restaurant as an additional permitted use, and to permit an unlicensed accessory outdoor patio as an additional permitted use, where drive-through restaurants, and unlicensed accessory outdoor patios are not permitted uses within this zone. To permit a minimum setback of 7.2 meters from the front lot line, which is Salem Road North, where the bylaw requires a minimum front lot line setback of 9 meters. To permit a minimum setback of 5.5 meters from the exterior side lot line, being Carrison Drive East, where the bylaw requires a minimum exterior side lot line of setback of 7.5 meters. To permit a minimum setback of 1.5 meters from the rear lot line, where the bylaw requires a minimum rear lot line setback of 9 meters. To permit a maximum gross floor area of 738 square meters, where the bylaw requires a maximum 500 square meters of gross floor area. And to permit a maximum building height of 6.9 meters for the restaurant, drive-through restaurant, and convenience store building, and a maximum of 6.7 meters for the automatic motor vehicle washing establishment building, where the bylaw requires a maximum height of 4.3 meters for all structures on the lot. Eric, was notice served, and were any responses received?
Notice was served and no responses were received.
Great, thank you. And do we have the applicant with us this evening?
Hi there, this is Kaylee Robbins from Western Consulting. I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
Great, thank you. For the applicant, staff have written a report recommending approval of the application, subject to 3 conditions within the report. 1, that the owner or applicant obtain approval of site plan application SP4/19 to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant update their transportation impact study prepared by NextTrans Consulting Engineers to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. And 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Have you received a copy of this report?
Yes, we have.
Great, thank you. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended by staff?
No, we agree with the conditions.
Great, thank you. If you'd like to add any additional information to your application, now's your opportunity.
For sure, I have provided a presentation, but I've also reviewed the staff report, which is quite detailed, so I don't need to reiterate all that detail. If committee prefers, I'm happy just to answer questions you may have, but I'm at the committee's mercy. It's your decision.
Okay. Well, I will leave it to my fellow members of committee to decide whether they would like to see the presentation or if we're okay to go ahead with any questions we may have.
I'd like to see a presentation.
Sorry, Cecil?
I think that given the application and the nature of it, I believe it'll be beneficial to get a walkthrough of the logistics surrounding the application.
For sure.
Okay.
Okay, I will share my screen. Okay, so I do have the presentation. If someone could just confirm that it is being shared.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, my name is Kayla Robbins. I'm from Weston Consulting. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and owner, TSG Investments, Inc. And I'm also here with my colleague, Martin Corkbohm, also a planner at Weston Consulting. So as you know, the property is 400 Salem Road North. So this is the property here. It's at the northwest corner of Carrison Drive East and Salem Road North. It has an area of 0.67 hectares with 64 meters of frontage on Salem Road North and 78 meters of frontage on Carrison Drive East. So it's currently vacant. And we have submitted a site plan control application. We're currently in our fourth submission. So it is to permit the proposed development, which I will show you momentarily. So the minor variances are required to facilitate the form of development. So I don't think I'll read these over again, but I will show you these variances on the following plans. So essentially we are seeking 11 variances that have been discussed with staff through the various site plan submissions. So here's the site plan. I will just zoom in slightly. I hope you can see when it zooms in. So I'll just take a moment to speak to certain variances on this slide. So as the chairman mentioned, we are seeking to add 3 additional permitted uses to this site. So that includes the drive-through restaurant, the restaurant that is not a drive-through, as well as the unlicensed outdoor patio. So I hope you can see my mouse, but the outdoor patio is just in the front yard here at the intersection of Salem Road North and Carrison Drive East. And then the drive-through restaurant is here with the other restaurant just being located along Carrison Drive East. We are also seeking an increase in the maximum gross floor area. So generally speaking, this maximum requirement is to not have an overcrowded site, but we were still able to address, obviously some of the parking requirements and the required drive aisles and landscaping. So we thought all these uses are a better use and utilization of this site at this intersection. So that's why you see the additional uses as well as the increase in the maximum gross floor area. And then on this slide, I'll also discuss, so we are requesting a decrease in the parking requirement. This was based on discussions with the town as well as a review of a proxy site in Markham that contained similar uses. So essentially, the justification for the decreased parking is that many of these uses on this site, specifically, the car wash, the convenience store, and their drive-through restaurants are short-term uses. So it's not expected that people would be parked on the site for quite long. So that's where we have the justification for the decreased parking, as well as the gas station component of this site plan. So here are the gas station with the canopy, the convenience stores in the middle there, restaurants on the side, as I mentioned, and then the automatic car wash is just to the side there. So this next slide, I'll zoom back out, demonstrates the landscape buffers. So we are proposing to decrease the landscape buffer along Carrison Drive East and Salem Road North. So this is just to accommodate for the various uses, the parking, the drive aisles that we've proposed. So we've tried to also accommodate additional landscaping such as decorative fencing and greenery, especially around the drive-through to screen that use. We feel that these decreased landscape buffers still provide adequate screening and buffering. And we really wanted to orient the buildings closer to the street to improve the public realm and focus on pedestrian activity and circulation. So this slide here shows the front and side yard setbacks. So we are proposing a reduction in the front yard setback, which is number 2 here, to 7.25 meters. Again, to bring the building closer to the road, to take the focal point away from vehicles and create a safer space for pedestrians, especially with the use of the patio. So we've reduced that to the 7.25. And then for the exterior side yard onto Kerrison, we have also reduced that to 5.5 meters, again, to orient the building closer to the street as per town urban design guidelines. And then similarly, the next slide is also the rear yard setback, which is just over here. So the site is an irregular shape. So it pinches in here, which actually is, zoomed in right here. And this is where it is the 1.5 meters. So we don't believe this will have any impact on adjacent properties, as this here is a drive aisle that's shared between this property and the adjacent property just here. So there wouldn't be any buildings located close to this structure. So that's why we thought this reduction was appropriate. So lastly, we have the increase in the maximum building height for both the main building, which is 6.9 meters, and then the automatic car wash, which is 6.7. So generally speaking, this is to accommodate additional architectural features that just create a higher quality product. For the higher parapets, for example, are what really bring that height above the minimum or maximum requirement. And it also screens the electrical component on the rooftop. And that's similar to the car wash. We wanted to maintain that architectural style from the main building to the car wash. So there's a slight decrease in height for the car wash, but generally they have the same design. So that's where you see the increase for both the car wash and the main building. So yes, we did assess all variances against the minor variance test. We feel that it does maintain the general intent purpose of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw. 2 zones apply to this property, and for example, the additional permitted uses we are seeking are allowed in the 1 zone that applies to the property. And further, the official plan encourages development to be consistent with the urban design guidelines, which is what we've made sure of with the site plan design. And third, the test is the development desirable and appropriate, and we feel that it is. It fully utilizes the site, and the site layout and orientation of the building is a more efficient design and focuses on pedestrian activity. And do we believe that it's minor in nature? And the answer is yes, it's consistent with urban design guidelines. So we feel that it is the type of development the town has envisioned for a property such as this one. And there have been previous approvals with public processes where there have been a chance for public comment, and there have been certain matters discussed through the site plan process that we feel have been addressed, such as traffic, for example. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I look forward to your discussion.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, do any members of committee have questions for the applicant? Sorry, Wasif?
Yeah, just a question to the presenter. In terms of number of employees in the entire establishment, how many do you kind of foresee at any given point?
I do not have a number for you, unfortunately. Perhaps Martin, I'm not sure if you would have a number in mind. I would assume 1 or 2 for the convenience store at a time. And then unfortunately, I'm not sure how much the restaurant would need at any given point. So Martin, I'm not sure if you have anything to add for that.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Martin Parker-Pome. I'm a senior associate with Weston Consulting and have been working on the site plan application with the town for a couple of years now, as well as with the severance for the block and the approval for the shared easement for the access. So I've got a good understanding of the long-term history of the property. To answer your question, the number of jobs has not been defined, but we expect that there would be between 10 to 15 full-time and part-time employees that would be employed by both restaurants, as well as the convenience store and car wash.
And does that align? Sorry, Mr. Chair, just through you again, if I may follow up.
Sure, absolutely.
Does that also align with the proxy site that you guys were looking at as well, Martin?
Yes, to your question, yes, it does. It was comparable site in terms of size and the uses as well. So the proxy site had similar type of uses and similar size of facility, and would have offered a similar size and number of jobs as well.
Okay. Okay.
Laurie, did you still have a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to staff, I'm wondering about the car wash. I have a couple questions or comments, but the first one is the car wash component of this site. Was notice served to the car wash that is literally a stone's throw away that already exists from this one? Are they aware that this is going in?
Through the chair, yes, they would have received notice. All property owners within 60 meters of the subject land receives notice. They also would have received notice at the time of the previous zoning bylaw amendment application. And just to clarify, the zoning bylaw amendment application that was previously discussed at a public meeting back in 2018, that was the meeting that actually introduced that particular use. So they are aware. And it's simply a coincidence that they are proceeding with a car wash as well. I believe their car wash, though, isn't an automatic one. I could be wrong about that.
It is a different style. It is a different style. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Another question that I'm just kind of going a little bit off my colleague's comment on the amount of staff that would be on the property. The reduction in parking, I'm never a fan of reduction in parking, and reducing it by having 35 spaces for all those permitted uses, plus the amount of staff that are going to be in there. And then when I'm looking at the surrounding areas, should it go over the 35 spots, there doesn't appear to be currently, I realize there's a lot of undeveloped land around there, anywhere that people could park, should it go over that 35 spots. So I do have a concern about that. My other concern was, and it's to do with the fact that your application has the building going closer to the street. And I'm concerned for a couple reasons for that. Because the sitting area is closer to the street, and that concerns me. It's beside the drive-through, which also concerns me. And the fact that, God forbid there was ever an accident, like the people are the barrier if there was ever an accident in that intersection. So that also concerns me about the way the layout is. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at my notes as I'm talking. And in relation to that, on page 6 of the staff report, it says that it should be noted that staff continue to encourage the applicants to locate the buildings closer to the street. And I don't personally just said don't love that idea of it actually being closer, but the word encourage isn't a hard and fast, it must be closer. So what happens if, like, can this plan change is the long and short of my question.
Through the chair, those are all concerns that are reviewed through the site plan process. So it is part of our urban design outlined in our guidelines, as well as within our official plan, to bring those buildings closer to the street. That helps enliven the streetscape. And that's a common practice across the town, particularly in areas of this nature. I do want to touch on your point about some of your concerns regarding, the patio out front, et cetera. I would note that there is a boulevard and also a sidewalk in advance of that patio area. So the patio isn't sitting right at the corner there. And once again, those are all concerns reviewed by staff through the site plan process as well. I'm not sure if you had any other, if I didn't touch upon all of your questions there, Lori. If you need a follow-up, I'm happy to respond further.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further questions, Cecil?
Yeah, through the chair. And I just want to touch upon what my colleague just said. And maybe there was an answer somewhere in there by staff, but I'd just like to throw it back again and see whether we can get some further clarification on this. So I'm aware that there will be an ultra decorative wall separating the proposed development to the adjacent streets. And it was stated that this was done to reflect the town's urban plan requirements, et cetera, et cetera. I was wondering if the design of the outer perimeter wall is linked in some form to traffic impact EHS type studies. And if so, is there an explanation for that?
Through the chair, sorry, I'm not sure exactly what your question is referring to. In terms of that masonry wall, that is one of the enhanced landscape features to help better screen that drive-through facility area of the site. And any of the landscape plans and details are reviewed more specifically through the site plan process. Sorry, I didn't really catch what your question was. Do you mind clarifying?
Yeah, well, it's in regards to risk analysis. From a safety standpoint, the proximity of the wall with respect to the street, because of the reduction of buffers, has there been an environmental health and safety impact study or personnel or people impact study, EHS study that was done to evaluate the safety requirements of where this wall will be, where people will be relative to the street?
Through the chair, staff from various different departments review the site plan process and are aware of the location of the masonry wall, other landscaping features, the patio area, etc. We don't have a specific safety person, if that's what you mean, to review that item more specifically. If you're concerned in regards to impacts as it relates to the street, traffic wise, et cetera, I can confirm that our transportation staff section, our transportation services section, sorry, have reviewed the application. They've also been the main commenter on the transportation impact study that's been submitted. And ultimately that walks through not only the parking reduction, but in general, the other details of the site as it relates to traffic impacts.
Okay, thank you. That supplies some additional information, which I thought I couldn't quite grasp initially in answer to my colleague's question. Thank you.
And Carolyn, just to confirm, clarify, that masonry screening wall is strictly to screen the drive-through queuing area, correct? Not the patio area itself.
Through the chair, yes, that screening is there to enhance not only the streetscape, but particularly to screen that drive-through area. We do our best to avoid having the parking area and any kind of vehicular movement being the dominant feature at the street. So that is intended to screen the drive-through area. So you're correct.
Great, thank you. Okay, are there any further questions from members of committee? Seeing none, and is there anyone here to speak either for or against the application this evening? Seeing none, in that case, if we can look for a motion, please. Mark? Sorry, I'm not sure who had their hand up first there.
Okay, I could go. Through the chair, I move to approve application A22/21, seeing its minor in nature and meets the 4 tests, subject to the conditions set forth by staff.
Thank you. And is there a seconder on the motion? Lori, thank you. Seconded by Lori. And all those in favor? All in favor. Thank you. Application A22/21 for 400 Salem Road North is approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Great, thank
you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
And that concludes our application portion of this evening's meeting. If any members of committee or staff have additional business to discuss, go ahead with that. If not, we can look for a motion to adjourn. Cecil?
To adjourn?
Great, thank you. And is there a seconder? Wasif, thank you. All those in favor? Great, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.